video, we're going to explore confidence intervals and significance test Shiny apps for dealing with two groups of data. Previously, the other videos covered separately the one sample tests for proportion and one sample for means, and that was confidence intervals as well as testing. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Compare Two Population Proportions app, since this is very similar to comparing two population means. In this app, you'll notice that this time they're comparing two sets of data, and they ask you for some information about both if you wanted to enter individual observations or number of successes. You could also just pull a textbook data set. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the, let's say, aspirin and cancer data set for this. You notice that you can have different sample sizes. That's perfectly fine. The proportions don't have to be the same, but essentially what you're looking for with your confidence intervals or hypothesis testing here is going to be related to the difference in those samples. So you basically want to find out, is the difference equal to 0? Is it more than 0? Is it less than 0? What are we learning about? So we're trying to estimate the population information. So if these populations are the same, if they're different, more, less, etc., or if they are in fact really close together. So something you'll notice that's different is in this case, you have, when you use your confidence interval, you have values that tend to be quite a bit smaller. So why do I say quite a bit smaller? Well, in this case, you're comparing the difference meaning subtraction. So with our confidence interval to use the app, just change it to whatever confidence level you want. And then down here, you could check the margin of error z-score if you wanted or if you needed that for something. Now, if you want to use the significance test portion of the app, you have to decide, are you testing this two-sided, which means that they are not the same, they're not equal to each other, or did you want to test to see if one of them is greater than the other? So either less than, greater than, again, depending on what you're trying to learn about this. Now, to make your decision, once you've selected if it's one-sided, two-sided, then you would compare your p-value to whatever significance level you had predetermined. Remember, that was something you needed to have before you dove into this question. You can't decide the significance level based off of the end result. You have to have that decided first. If you're dealing with dependent samples, you can select this up here. So that would be if you're dealing with something that one thing was dependent on the other. So you see this a lot with before and after. So like if you were measuring if someone's beliefs have changed from before a certain event to after a certain event, then this is where you would be looking at dependent samples. The app for dealing with population means is also very similar to that. I'm going to go ahead and open this up so we can take a look at it just to see if there's any major differences. And same thing, you'll notice up at the top, we have our dependent samples as well as our non-dependent samples here. So if you're trying to compare using a confidence interval or a significance test, the process is still the same, only this time you're going to be entering the quantitative data for each set, whereas with the proportion app, you were looking at the number of successes. So that was the number of yeses in a response to some type of question, depending on whatever success is defined as for you. Again, these apps are used the same way that the one samples are, only this time you're comparing the two samples to one another and you're no longer comparing them to some proposed population value that you might be familiar with. Thanks for watching.